Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this unique online conference. Wherever you are, I hope you are well and safe. My name is Yarden, and I am very excited to be with you today. So please excuse any hiccups along this live conference. It is my pleasure to invite our first two speakers of the evening, Chemi and Dr. Ami Apelbaum. Hi, Ami.
Hi, Yarden. Hi, everyone.
Hello, Yarden. Hello, Ami.
So a quick introduction. Chemi is the managing general partner and co-founder of Pitango Venture Capital and is the chairman of the Paris Center for Peace and Innovation. Dr. Ami Apelbaum is the chief scientist and the chairman of the board of the Israel Innovation Authority. Dr. Apelbaum has more than 36 years experience in research, development, and senior level management. Chemi and Ami, before we dive in, with your permission, I would like to share with you two presidential quotes that I find that complement each other and are very relevant to the upcoming conversation that will take place today throughout the conference. The first is Israeli President Shimon Peres, that I think frames the whole idea. He said that the new world of science and knowledge calls on you to embark with courage and hope and bring us to a new era of peace. The second quote is of President Theodore Roosevelt. It was made recently much more known by Brené Brown. And this is a quote that talks about the effort that needs to be made to make a difference. And he said, it's not the critic who counts. It's not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done it different. The credit belongs to the person who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred with dust and sweat, who strives valiantly, who errs, and who, in the end, while he may know the triumph of high achievement, at least when he fails, he does so daring greatly. So let's talk about the people who are actually in the arena. Chemi, I'd like to start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about what we call the Paris way? The link that you view that is the silver lining between peace and innovation.
Thank you very much, Yarden, and I'm delighted to be here today and thank the embassy and the great team at the Paris Center for Peace and Innovation and the rest of the people on this call, which are working very hard in order to change the reality in the Middle East. In a very short way, I will say a phrase from my father in a short movie that is displayed in the center. And he says that in our days, in the new era, the sword is giving way to computers. And if computers can prolong life, why should we kill each other? And in more specific way, I would say that he spoke about a journey that we are taking from an old world to a new world. We are leaving behind us a world of wars between nations, a world of bloodshed and killing over land and over natural resources. And we're moving into a new era of science, technology, entrepreneurship, and innovation. And with our minds and with our brains, we can shape tomorrow. He said that instead of remembering, let us think forward and let us transition ourselves from yesterday to tomorrow. And in this new world of science and technology, we can actually create everything that we lack or compensate for every scarcity. If we need clear water, we can desalinate or reuse water and refresh them. We can harvest energy. We can provide for our healthcare and transportation. So nations that will become innovation nations, just like Israel, will be peaceful one because they don't have to fight anymore over those resources, but rather grow like a tree, grow our roots deep into the ground and bear fruits, and side by side create a forest that can face global threats that we're entering, just like the COVID-19.
Well, thank you for that. And that's a very important framing of the conversation. So my next question for you, Chemi, is more practical and relevant to the rest of the conference. What do you see is the potential in Israeli-Palestinian cooperation in general, and of course, specifically in the fields of tech innovation and entrepreneurship?
So I think it goes way beyond complementing the need for the HR or human resources that the Israeli ecosystem lacks so badly. I think that the future of economy lies within our ability to advance technologically. We had a dream of creating a startup region out of the startup nation or together with the startup nation. And what happened in Israel is actually that hundreds of global enterprises came to Israel to bring the world with them, the knowledge, the know-how, how to develop products and how to take them to the market. And side by side with those global enterprises, we started to build our own startup ecosystem and provide opportunities for the young generation to build new businesses and create new jobs and carry the economy forward. And I think this is exactly what the Middle East needs today. And I think that the Palestinians and the Israelis, just like the Jordanians and other countries in the Middle East, can take an active role in shaping a new climate with the Middle East. We had a dream that the Middle East, which has more than 400 million people that speaks a common language, can gather and create an internet around it and bring all the businesses together and make them much more efficient and resilient and drive the Middle East forward instead of backwards. The benefit for Israel will be tremendous. We will be part of a local, a regional, and a global ecosystem together with other countries in the Middle East, and everyone will come and invest here. That is a vision that's worth pursuing, in my view.
Thank you for that. Ami, same question to you. How is, or what is the potential as it's viewed by you, by the Israeli Innovation Authority, in Israeli cooperation across borders, specifically with our direct neighbors?
Thank you, Yarden, and thank you, Chemi. It's good to see you again today. And thank you all the attendees of this very, very important meeting. The potential in that kind of event is to address different levels. I would like to start from the very practical level that Andrew just talked about, that Israel short of talent, of engineers, very, very practical. Andrew said 10,000, and I would argue with the recent research that we did, it's 18,000. Even I would say it's much larger number that Israeli companies employed overseas, in India or in Ukraine and other places in the world, more than 80,000 engineers who work in favor of Israeli companies. Think about that, we'll take 1/10 of this number as an engineer from the region. And for me, the region is the Palestinians, of course. I mean, what is better, to drive to Ukraine or to Bangalore, or to drive, which you cannot drive, you cannot travel even, or to drive to Ramallah? So the answer is very obvious, especially that they can come over to Israel. So and both sides can benefit from the exchange of knowledge. The second element is to co-develop projects and co-develop companies that we in the Israel Innovation Authority have an international division that its all purpose is to drive joint project, joint investment, joint companies between Israeli and foreign entities. For that matter, why not to do it with the Palestinians? It could be a company in Palestine, in the West Bank. It could be a group of engineers. There are endless of opportunities. The last point that I want to make is the potential here to create a joint interest and mutual values. And once people have a joint purpose, and once people are heading into the same direction, all the frictions are getting a different perspective. And if we just see what the COVID-19 taught us, that fighting with each other across the border is negligible compared to the epidemic that is coming. No one sees it. It's just penetrating every house, every family, especially the elderly. And the challenge become all of a sudden a global challenge that the regional challenges are shrinking, are mimicking compared to the global challenge that humankind is facing. If we jointly with our neighbor, with the region, will address those challenges and we all have a common objective and common purpose, all of a sudden the world look very, very differently. And we are looking forward to that to happen.
So I want to build off of what you've just said about COVID-19, because obviously we can't, have a conversation today without addressing the global pandemic that we're all facing. And you said very rightly so that it taught us and teaches us that when we face a joint challenge, there's a lot of work that we can do jointly together. Can you tell us a little bit about what you in the Israeli Innovation Authority learned throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, whether it was in development of tech or innovation or relationships between companies or relationships between authorities and countries, a little bit of what your outlook today? Obviously, there's much more still to learn, but anything you can tell us of the thoughts and conversations happening currently.
What we learned that with a global interaction, with a global database, for example, that will be much more freely exchange of data. For example, today there is a lot of restriction and regulation because of the privacy issues on sharing genomic data. And of course, we all want to protect the privacy and people right for being free and not to be controlled by the government on their movement. That said, it doesn't have to be in a way that you cannot anonymize those information and data, and all of a sudden to share it, and not to share it only in the population in Israel, because think about it, that China was ahead of the rest of the world with the developing of the pandemic, and if we all will learn faster from their way to react and how to react, and if we could share more of the genomic data, the clinical data, if we had a platform to do it. We have some, but not enough. Let alone, again, I want to bring it closer to home, that there is no reason why the Palestinians and the Israelis will not share more of the technology on how to disinfection area. And we have many developments that we funded here by Israel Innovation Authority of multiple companies, how to disinfect area, how to test that you don't have to test whether or not you have the coronavirus without getting into central labs. You can actually blow air into some gadget or into some plastic bag, and you can on the spot identify whether or not you get infected. I don't see a reason why it will not be used by our immediate neighbor and by the regions. And I can go on and on the area that we learned that collaboration is a key, because once you have the big, if you want to use artificial intelligence, you need a big data. If you want the big data, use the big population that you have. And now all of a sudden you can shorten processes of developing solution, developing drugs, developing equipment by order of magnitude because of this large data. And that's, I think, the opportunity for all of us to use.
Thank you. Chemi, Ami very clearly drew out for us what is Israel's interest in cooperation, and specifically mentioned the issue of the talent that there is on the Palestinian side, and the issue of outsourcing to Palestinian professionals, which we'll deep dive into throughout the conference. But I want to hear from you about Israel's interest in a burgeoning, growing, vital Palestinian tech and innovation ecosystem, in the idea of having an ecosystem which is growing and the potential there. What do you think of that?
I would say that one of the challenges of Israel is the fact that we've been always an island, far away from the market. And for us to expand, whatever we do when we start a company, we have to be global from day one. And I think that there will be other speakers that will talk about it later on. But imagine that we were not an island. Imagine that the Middle East is an ocean where all boats can sail freely and expand and collaborate and have partnerships from the very beginning. Think of a company that starts in Silicon Valley without moving. They are in a local, regional, and national and a global market without making an effort to fly over to other territories. So I think that it is critical that we have a smooth growth for every startup that starts either in the Palestinian authorities or in Israel or in somewhere else in the Middle East. That's a tremendous opportunity. The second thing is think about the market that is adjacent to us. Israel does not have a market. We are so small that nobody comes here because of their interest in the market. Imagine that what we innovate can actually be implemented in the region. What kind of a market we would create and what kind of investments it will be attracting from around the world. You see what the Chinese have done with their speaking, the Chinese speaking language. They managed to build huge companies, and we all need to understand that the empires, the economic empires of tomorrow are empires of the mind, of technology, of science. It is so happening in the US, it is so happening in China, it is starting to happen in Israel. We already have some companies in Israel that cross the $10 billion market cap. From Checkpoint to Wix, SolarEdge will be there, I hope soon, and other rising stars. Why not having it across the Middle East? Our economy would be much more strong and much more resilient and much more productive. And I think that at times of global threats, what we have learned through the COVID-19 is two things. First of all, that we are very fragile. While we have to take care of our own systems, the way for us to be resilient is actually by collaboration, as Ami said. And in addition to that, we understand that we have to automate our economy. We have to bring AI to our economy. So when we deal with global threats, our economy could continue and function. Actually, when you think about it, what we saw in COVID-19 is for the first time in human history that collectively and electively, we decided to create a global financial crisis to save people's life. And it shows you that actually we work together, even at times of crisis. So it's good for Israel not to be left alone on an island, but to be part of a vibrant economy that can expand and grow and be integrated part of the global economy.
So we've got time for just one last question. So Ami, I'd like you to build off of what Chemi said and ask you, does Israel have a role in expanding the startup nation into a startup region?
Absolutely. Israel built as an innovation ecosystem. It doesn't happen by itself. And that ecosystem that we build could value and gain tremendously if it will be a regional ecosystem instead of just local ecosystem. And that global or that regional ecosystem can lift up all aspects of the business that we think, because there is a good student and good professors in the West Bank, in Gaza, in Amman, in Jordan, in Saudi Arabia, in Lebanon, that we can work together on research, on development, transferring technology, developing, co-developing product, as I said, and then what it will create is much larger pool of talent that I'm sure, and I know from my experience, is distributed evenly around the world. There is no area that there is more talent than other. You just have to find them and you have to work with them and give them the credit. But then it will create something that today, as Chemi said, we are missing, which is large size market. Every product that Israeli company develop has to be exported or being distributed overseas with that you have to reach there flying out there instead of driving over there. So if we can now all of a sudden make this region as the distribution area where all those ideas and products can become now large product for millions and billions of people, now it's a very different game. As Chemi said, we have in Israel more than 350, actually more than 400 multinational companies. None of them, none, came to Israel because of the market. They came for the talent, for the out-of-the-box thinking, for the speed, and et cetera, et cetera. But all of a sudden, if we all have the big market here, now they will come here because of the market. And remember, and I think again, Chemi alluded that US got part of its really muscles and economical strength because of the size. European Union, once it got unionized in the European Union, they become a strong economical power. China the same. Where is the next? So some people will argue Africa, but they are, have to jump through many, many hoops. But the Middle East, if we will become the fourth, if I would say, US, China, and the European Union, and the Middle East, think about the opportunity. All of a sudden, we can talk as equal with all those superpowers instead of the mimicking Israel, mimicking Jordan, and the poor Lebanon. We all of a sudden, and the talent, Israel already gained this reputation that the multinational companies coming here. Why not leveraging it? We have a big opportunity that sooner we manage it, sooner we harvest it, we're better off, and the world will be better off.
By the way, if we bring Africa and the Middle East together, think about that.
It's really hard to drive them.
Well, Chemi and Ami, thank you so much for enlightening us. Thank you for your very optimistic and very practical outlook on the potential. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I want just one closer. President Barack Obama said that the peace is at the end of the people.
Let me just thank the Israeli Innovation Authority for their close partnership to the Paris Center for Peace. And let us dream. And as my father said, no room for small dreams. Let us dream big.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you.
So